Okay, welcome. Peace and love. Welcome to the 6th episode of the Sacred Sisterhood Show. Our guest for today is Nikki Valentine, an elevation coach, an author, a founder of the Style Shaman. Nikki is a shining light in the online world of personal development. She offers one-on-one sessions, workbooks, digital courses, and social media content filled with strategies for conquering anxiety, depression, and host of other very valuable topics. Welcome to the Sacred Sisterhood Show. This sacred space is all about empowering women to achieve their best selves in all aspects of life. I'm your host, Callie Devine, and I'm so excited for our in-depth discussions about spirituality, mindfulness, and personal growth. Whether you're just starting your journey or looking to level up, the Sacred Sisterhood Show is here to support you every step of the way. Our guest and I share our unique experiences and perspectives to help you unlock your hidden potential, tap into your inner goddess, and find your purpose in life. So sit back, grab a cup of tea or wine, and let's get ready for some good vibes and positive energy. We're honored to have Nikki Valentine here with us today to share her insights on how to break through the barriers of anxiety and depression and find a path to greater peace and well-being. Get ready to be inspired, uplifted, and motivated to embrace your own journey of self-discovery, healing, and guidance. Let's get started. Welcome, Goddess. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for sharing time with us in this space. I think this topic today is very important, especially amongst women in our culture and background, because a lot of undiagnosed mental health disorders are very prevalent in our community. So before we get started, I want to just do a little icebreaker. I do this with every guest. It's called Spin the Wheel. So I'm just going to pull up my screen really quick, and then we are going to spin the wheel.
Ooh, I feel like I'm on Wheel of Fortune.
Okay. Daily gratitude practice. Do you practice daily gratitude? Let me just ask you that in the first place.
I do. So it's either kind of just mental or sometimes I write it in my journal, but I do try to stop and take at least 5 minutes to think about the things that have gone well during my day. I do a daily walk. So even if it's 5 minutes, I take a walk every day. And usually that's my kind of talk to God time. And that's usually when I take an account of things that have gone well. And if I have any things that I feel like I need spiritual guidance on, that's also my time. But I think gratitude is super important because it amplifies the positive energy of what you're trying to attract. So the more you're there's a saying that is, the more you are grateful for, the more you will be given to be grateful for. So absolutely.
So true. That is so true. And do you usually just write out what you're grateful for every day, or do you just think it and just acknowledge it?
I either write it or I say it out loud. And this may sound funny to some people, even if I'm by myself, I say it out loud because there is something to the activation of energy happens when words are tangible. So of course we think thoughts all day and those are powerful, but when you put them to paper or you say them out loud, there's actually an increased energy behind what you say. So even if I'm by myself and I'm just talking to God, sometimes I say it out loud or I'll write it down in my journal.
Well, that's very important. And I just started practicing that recently. I'm not 100% consistent still, but I did notice that when I'm actively acknowledging the things that I'm grateful for, more of that comes to me.
Right? So, it's a fun exercise. It just pumps up. It's like an avalanche. It makes the energy flow faster, I think.
It's like because you're focusing on the positives instead of the negatives.
100%. If you ever want an easy way to do it, there's a free app. So have you heard of the book, The Secret? So they have an app called The Secret Money app. And one of the things I love, it gives you affirmations and all the things, but it actually has a really cool tracker where you write down all the things you've been gifted, discounted, or given for free. And so it lets you actually keep monetary track of all the free blessings that you've gotten. So it's actually a cool way of showing gratitude, but it almost shows you tangibly how much you have to be grateful for, which I think is amazing.
That is pretty cool. I like that. And it's called what's it called?
It's called The Secret Money app.
Okay.
Yeah. Sort of even like little things like, oh, somebody gave me a free ride or somebody paid for my gas or I got a free dinner. Like when you start adding it up, it's actually so much value of things that we get for free, that I think that's also a cool way to look at gratitude, is like, you may not have paid, but look at how much value came your way for free. Just
it didn't come in the form of money, but it
right.
still came in whatever you may have needed at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So can I get into a little bit about how you came about healing other individuals? I'm not sure. Do you only aim to heal women, or is it just a collective that you speak your message to?
So my clients and I would say my passion people are Black women, but I don't hold back my message from anybody. I think healing is universal. So I often get people who are not people of color, men sometimes are engaging with my content, and I love to see that. But I think a lot of times I make content for Black women only because we are an underserved community. So that's usually where I put my focus. But everybody can get this healing work.
Yeah, I'm non-prejudiced myself. This is a platform. I do represent my people, right? My culture and women. I'm the voice and advocate for women, but I'm not. I would allow anybody to speak their truth and
yes.
Heal from the messages that our guests have to share. How long have you been in this? Because it seems like you are pretty experienced based off of like some of the videos that you put on TikTok. They're very, they're full of wisdom and expertise.
Thank you. So I received my degree in human development and psychology in 2007. So that was actually my first degree. And then in 2017, I became a licensed holistic wellness coach and started my business, I would say 2018. So I've been at this for a while. It's just now coming out to social media. So it's also kind of funny. We're like, you just popped up out of nowhere. And I'm like, sort of. It's just that I was doing a lot of this work offline. And I also worked in tech, and I did a lot of like corporate wellness. So facilitating wellness sessions within a corporate space. So I did that work for, I would say, 3 or 4 years. So I've gotten to have a lot of amazing experience. I've done one-on-one sessions, group coaching. During 2020, we did an amazing series called Healing Together, which was for 12 weeks. We did it was 2 hours a week of group coaching for women to get through the pandemic. So I've been at this a while is the short answer. But I'm now sharing my content on social media, which has been super exciting.
Now, you are a holistic wellness coach.
Yes. Yeah, that is my licensed coach. I call myself an elevation coach only because I kind of add a component onto typically what holistic coaches offer, which is that while we're going to look at healing, while we're going to look at your wellness routine, I also am very passionate about teaching the energetics of abundance to Black people, because I feel like oftentimes we try to go the traditional route and we can't seem to reach the level of abundance or success that we want. And because we're not given privilege, I think it's super important for us to learn kind of the spiritual backdoor. So that's why I call myself an elevation coach. It's kind of holistic coaching plus.
Okay. So I noticed that on your platform, you share tips on relationships, you share tips on healing from traumas, and you also share tips of how to manage and deal with anxiety and depression. And that's pretty much what the conversation is today, because like I said, it's very prevalent and undiagnosed in our community. 100%. So my first question to you is, how could a woman recognize the signs of anxiety and depression in themselves or in a close loved one?
I think and it's interesting that I studied anxiety long before I ever experienced it in myself. And I think that gave me a slightly different lens on top of the research, because Black women exhibit it a little bit differently. So there's the kind of typical symptoms of anxiety, affecting your mood, productivity, analysis paralysis, where it's very hard for you to start or follow through on projects, panic attacks, things that we know are kind of typical. But in Black women, anxiety actually shows up in a lot of ways that are not recognized, such as irritation, a short temper. What is sometimes perceived as an attitude or a person being angry is oftentimes anxiety in Black women. And the reason it shows up that way is that we have a unique feedback loop that says Black women are supposed to be strong. So for Black women that experience anxiety, you have the shame and the guilt on top of the anxiety that you feel. And that stack of emotions comes out as aggravation. It comes out as being short or not having patience. And so I always say, if there's someone around you who their mood and their personality seems to have changed, don't blame it on that. It really could be anxiety. It could be that the way they're expressing it isn't the way they're feeling it. And oftentimes in my friends or family members, close loved ones, that's usually what I tend to notice. Like, oh, wow, this person's getting a little bit more short, or things that used to not stress them out are really sending them over the edge, etc. That's how you can kind of tell that rise in anxiety. And really, it's just that your nervous system is dysregulated. And so that's how you can kind of tell, like, I'm not sleeping as well. I'm not eating as much. I'm crying a little bit more. I'm not able to finish projects the way I was, or I'm not able or motivated to start things. And also feeling that guilt, that shame, and that kind of short snappiness is oftentimes pointing to anxiety.
Okay. Now, anxiety and depression often play hand in hand.
They do.
So you always often hear that if a woman that is suffering from depression also has symptoms of anxiety.
Yes.
Is there a big difference in between the two definitions? Could you clarify for us?
For me, and I tend to tread lightly only because I'm not a licensed therapist, but I will say, just from my experience, depression tends to really weigh more heavily on loss of motivation. There's also an interesting, NYU recently did a study that one of the symptoms of depression most people don't recognize is a loss of not only libido, but the ability to experience pleasure in anything. So that means enjoying good food, enjoying music like you used to, being able to go out, enjoying anything that would give you pleasure. Typically, depression takes that away, right? And it also takes away your motivation to do and or execute. It just puts you in a, as I like to say, anxiety causes the jitters. Depression causes you to just lie down entirely, right? So like depression is kind of physically non-moving. Anxiety tends to make you over move. And so that's typically how people can tell, either if they're on one side or the other, or if you're experiencing both, how they're affecting you.
Okay. And how is a woman able to holistically kind of like heal or overcome symptoms and feelings of anxiety or depression without having to seek medication? You know, because that's pretty much what doctors want to run to firsthand. But how could somebody heal that holistically first?
So I want to speak candidly about this because I myself have experienced anxiety and depression. And I think something that is undervalued in the kind of coaching and the healing space is therapy. And in my opinion, that's a really needed part. It's a building block of the entire house of wellness. And here's what I mean by that. If you are experiencing anxiety and depression, sure, are there some things that have happened that you need to heal from? Yes, and we can do the energy work and the healing work and all of that. But there is actually a real mental health piece which can be addressed by therapy, in that you're figuring out what your triggers to anxiety and depression are. You're figuring out what your coping skills or your current coping mechanisms are. And that's something that a therapist is really well trained to help you step through. Now, to your point, I'm not a big believer in medicine as the first line of defense. I think that you want to get in there with a therapist who's going to properly analyze and be able to look at the whole picture and say, are there some environmental and personal changes that need to happen? Or is this a situation in which we might actually need medication? Now, unfortunately, as Black people, we write off all medication. With anxiety, that can actually be very dangerous because it can be very helpful. I know a lot of Black people, men and women, who have said, wow, when I finally took anxiety medication, I almost cried because why didn't I do this sooner? I've been making myself suffer for no reason when there truly was just something off about my brain and there was a way to chemically like get that back in alignment. So I would say therapy, number one, really for everybody, but also explore with your therapist if medication could be something that's helpful. I always say, try things in the lowest doses and build yourself up. And if there's a second that you feel like it's messing with your system, come off of that and get another recommendation. So I'll just say those first two things to start. But in terms of what can you do to heal yourself, or maybe if you're not comfortable with those, is figuring out what triggers you is the first step. So I'll give you a personal example. I never experienced anxiety until I was hired by a big tech company many years ago, and the role was a huge stretch from what I had been doing prior in my career. And it just like gave me a lot of anxiety. And for the first couple of months, I just was kind of shaken up and I couldn't figure out what's happening here. right? And it's just like coming out of nowhere. And then I had a really great suggestion from my therapist. She said, well, if it's recent, when did you first notice it? And that was such a good question to ask because it was actually kind of stupid. I had to buy a coat because I was being flown to Europe somewhere that was super cold for the first time. And when I walked into a store, there were so many choices that I had a panic attack. And she said, okay, let's stop right there. Do you realize that you are out of your comfort zone? You're being presented with a lot of things you've never seen before, and you simply don't have the information or the experience, right? So that is what's triggering your anxiety. She said, now think about other times in your life where you feel unequipped, unprepared, or unsupported. Those same feelings kick off your anxiety over and over again. Just understanding that was so helpful as I started to move through my life, because then I could recognize like, oh, this is one of those things, right? And so either I can remove myself from that situation, try to take myself out of that situation, or I now have the language to communicate and say, you know what? This level of uncertainty or X, Y, and Z thing is what triggers my anxiety. I can communicate that to people in my life. I can communicate that to people on my job. For a lot of mental health, it's that we don't have an understanding, we don't have the language. So we beat up on ourselves, or we feel broken, or we feel damaged, or right, when really the more we know and the more we identify, the easier it is for us to function. So for example, I have social anxiety. Now that I know that and I know what triggers it, I can tell people. So for example, I went to a picnic on Sunday and I said, guys, it was already enough for me to get here. You're asking me to go to a club afterwards. That's at the limit of I can't do that, right? I think sometimes when you don't understand yourself and you don't have the language, now you're in the situation in real time. You feel bad. You feel like the broken person. It creates this storm rather than being like, oh, wait, crowds trigger me. I have anxiety. I can now communicate that to people. And they're like, oh, girl, totally understand. Let's go somewhere where there's very few people. Right? So I think the healing starts with understanding and researching and giving ourselves language, which is why the videos are so important for me, because I want people to feel seen and to have the tools and the language to go, oh, wait, I'm not crazy. I'm not broken. This is actually a thing. And this is how I can identify it in myself and how I can share that with people in my life.
And that is very important to just be aware. And I have a story myself. You spoke about anxiety, and I actually had experience with depression for a long time. I believe it started with like postpartum depression, and I didn't know that at first. I was aware of postpartum depression, but I was not aware of how it would make me feel personally, which was kind of unorthodox to what I was hearing from medical professionals. So I just learned to live with it for years. On and off. And then finally I was like, I don't like feeling this way anymore. I had to find some type of medical prevention, and I found therapy as well. So therapy is a common theme in this show. And I swear that it has changed my mentality and my thinking for the best, because it allowed me to be more self-aware of what's going on with my triggers, what causes the symptoms and the signs, and what the psychological things that are going on in my brain, like the decrease in serotonin, and how to actually how to replace it naturally and holistically, right? The next question I wanted to ask is, how would you kind of incorporate self-care practices such as exercise and like journaling, like we mentioned, or just even practicing spirituality with helping people decrease the symptoms when they arise? How would you incorporate some self-care practices to kind of alleviate that?
Absolutely. So and that's an amazing question, because one of my favorite things my therapist has ever said to me is that healing is a daily practice. People think healing is like a destination. I'm healed.
Yes.
No. Healing is the daily maintenance, and it's the way that you handle life daily when big emotions hit. And that's like the best definition I've ever heard. And to me, that's the same way that most people think of self-care, right? If you ask people the definition of self-care, that's what they would say. The daily practice, that is healing. So for me, I make self-care part of my productivity to-do list. And here's what I mean by that. We have our list of things that we have to do during the day, right? And then we have the things that we think are optional. And what tends to happen is the optional stuff gets left to the end and it doesn't happen. For me, the biggest shift was making my self-care part of my have to do to-do list. So for things like take a daily walk, it's on my to-do list to the point that if I see it's approaching midnight, and this has happened to me many times, it's 11:50, and I'm like, I have not done what I was supposed to do today. That is on my list. The same thing as going to work, the same thing as taking care of your kids, all the things. And I will literally go for a 5-minute walk and make it before midnight because I changed my mindset to be, this is not a thing that I do if I feel like it. This is not a thing I do if I'm in the mood or whatever. It's no matter how I feel, no matter if I'm sick, no matter if I have cramps, every single day, this is a to-do list thing. Because when we decide something is important enough and it's a priority, we do it every day. We go to work every day. We pay our bills every month. We don't do that when we feel like it, right? We don't say, I'm going to take care of these kids if I'm in the mood today. What? Can you imagine? Can you imagine how you'd parent if you only did it when you felt like it? You might leave them kids somewhere up under a bus shelter and be like, I don't actually feel like it ever. So for me, self-care is that non-negotiable. And what I like to tell people is find the 2 or 3, because I say start small. Sometimes when we get so ambitious, we play ourselves because we set ourselves up for our own disappointment. So I say pick the 2 or 3 things that are going to have the biggest impact on how you feel. So for me, I know that depression makes you want to stay in bed all day. So for me, a walk is non-negotiable because if I do not get outside once during the day, I will think that my entire life is gone to crap and I won't leave the house for a week because depression makes you not want to get out of bed. For anxiety, I know that analysis paralysis is one of the biggest symptoms. So for my business, for example, 1 piece of content a day, checklist. I have been on vacation. I have been at people's houses. I have made content from the corner of people's bathroom because on my list, it said you had to do 1 piece of content today. And that's doable. If I have marketing coaches that are like, it should be 5 to 6 pieces of content on each and every platform every day. I don't have that yet. I have anxiety. But what I'm going to commit to is 1 walk, 5 minutes, 1 piece of content. So I like to say start small and pick those few things and make them non-negotiable for you, right? Maybe it's a morning routine, eating breakfast, going to the gym. I do the same thing with working out. I have to hit 3 days a week. And it's hilarious to watch me negotiate with myself because like Friday will come and then I'm like, crap, I have to actually go today because there's only 3 days left. Mm-hmm. So once we put our feet to the fire of, I am important enough to make self-care a priority and part of my to-do list, and I'll shift my life around to make sure it happens. That is what gives us the daily maintenance. Choose a better sad. If you have anxiety and depression, you might be sad, but you can still make better choices in that sadness. That's the thing, right? Where a lot of us say, well, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I can't get out of bed. No, you can still be sad while you're on your walk. That's okay. You'll be sad at the gym too, and that's fine. But see, at least you were sad and you did things that were good for your nervous system. And the reverse Uno card is when you do those things, you can't be sad because your brain is forced to be in the present moment. Anxiety comes from thinking about the future. Depression comes from thinking about the past. Self-care makes you be mindful and stay in the present moment.
Absolutely. And what I got from that is that you just have to show up for yourself.
Yes. And
you have to follow through with what you say you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And it has been a very big struggle in my life because I used to set these goals. Okay, I want to work out 5 days this week, and then Monday I'm going home. Tuesday I'm there, and then it fizzles out. And I'm like, I'll just do it I'll start next Monday.
Yeah.
See, but the main thing is to be accountable for what you say you're going to do for yourself. Just show up, and, that has worked for me. That has worked for me when I don't feel like doing anything. Mm-hmm. I normally just get up and listen to my favorite music.
Yes.
That puts me in the mind space to, okay, now I can do the next thing. I can go work out like I said I would. So, yeah, it's definitely very helpful. Just, showing up and, being accountable for your own happiness.
Yeah. And I always like to say, too, think of what your future self would do. Mm-hmm. And I think about this in fitness, right? You want to get fit, but you're in your current mind state. So, of course, you're going to make decisions from your current mind state. There have been so many times where I've told myself, I don't feel like going to the gym today. But the version of me that has an 8-pack would go today. Mm-hmm. If I were a fitness girl, I'd go right now, and I would not make an excuse. So I'm always thinking about that next version of myself where I'm like, dang, I do want that six pack, but I'm not going to achieve it if I don't go, because that version of myself will go. And then you like, okay, so the decision isn't even on me and me being motivated. It's because I know what future self would do or higher self would do. She would do this. And I want to be her, so I'm going to think like her. I'm going to move like her.
I like that perspective, actually, the way you explained it. I've heard that before. You have to envision what you want what your future person, your future self is like, and then act in that role. Then it gets a little...
That's a nebulous thing to say. Yeah. Because then it's like, okay, so should I be a fake person? No. You just think and make decisions that the highest version of yourself would make. So, for example, if I know the highest version of myself doesn't maybe deal with anxiety and depression, so I am going to do that one piece of content. I am going to show up for my business. I am going to take that one walk, because I know on the other side of that, that person who feels better would do these things because she knows that that's how she's going to feel good.
Now let's talk about how women can avoid. Now, I know that you're kind of predestined to be a little anxious if your parents are anxious and you just are around that type of energy, especially as a child. But are there any ways that women can avoid just anxiety or depression with like balancing their work life and personal life? How are some ways that they can avoid it, like avoid the stress, avoid the burnout, and just kind of, just not even fall into those mental health categories?
In the first place, that's an excellent question. So there's a couple things. One is we spend more time at work than we do anywhere else, and including with our family. So I always tell people, start there. If you are at a job that is destroying your mental health or your spirit, I am confident there is something else you can do for the same amount of money that will not do that. Make it a priority to find that. And simply making the decision that says, actually, I deserve to be happy at work, starts that ball rolling. So that's number one, because as Black women, we tend to over-index at work and less on our personal, but that's actually counterintuitive and counterproductive, because if you're burnt out, you can't give your highest level of work. Doesn't make sense. If you're at a job that depletes you, you'll be too depleted to do a good job. See how that becomes a nasty cycle? So that's number one. Work-life balance is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. But the second thing is monitoring what you take in. Controversial thought, I do not watch the news. I will read the newspaper. I will look on Twitter. I might even go to Shade Room and see what's going on. But I am not going to allow a TV to yell fearful and scary thoughts to me during my day. Not going to do that, because that creates fear and it creates anxiety.
That's good.
I turn CNN as soon as I hear the news, turning it. I don't want to hear it, because they never come on there to give you good news. We know that. Not the Good News Network. Similarly, social media. Unfollow anyone that makes you think you have to be somebody else. Unfollow anyone that makes you feel like you're not doing enough, that you're too late, that you're not rich enough. Unfollow them, right? Unfollow anyone that's feeding you bad news or fearful news. Another controversial thought. Any of the deaths that have happened to Black people since the pandemic, I've never seen the video. I will never watch those. That damages my mind and it breaks my spirit. I don't need to see you getting choked out. I still feel for you, brother, and I'm going to pray for you. As Black people, we must stop taking in content that is traumatizing. We are traumatizing ourselves. So the second I see it come up on the feed, I'm gone. I will not watch that video. I'll give you an example. I have been the biggest Migos fan for the last 10, 15 years. I avoided the internet for weeks after Takeoff was killed because I will not let myself see that video. I cannot. That's going to destroy my mind and give me nightmares. So there's TV content, social media content. I actually have noticed this year, and I'm a huge hip hop head, but I only listen to trap music in the gym now. And I figured out that that has made such a difference in my vibration. Because if the music I listen to is positive and upbeat, I'm going to be positive and upbeat. No matter how much we love trap music, if you're talking about bitches, hoes, killing people, scamming folks, and that's constantly the angry tone that you're hearing, we don't want to admit it, but it affects you. It makes you angrier. It makes you want to take those risks. It makes you want to cut somebody out. Yep. So we have to avoid anything that feels like negativity. I think sometimes we don't think we have the choice to do that, but we do. We do not have to allow negativity. Anyone that knows me also knows I'm militant about who I'm around. I do not allow randomness into my space. I don't allow random people into my home. I don't allow random people around me. I don't like, it's not that I don't love new friends. I do, but I'm very scrupulous about, are you bringing drama? Are you bringing negativity? Do you always have a negative outlook on things? Are you a woe is me person? Do you take advice and actually apply it? Or do you just want to call and complain to me every week? Those type of people, no way. To the point that folks in my life know, if you want to come with that messiness, Nikki's probably going to cut it off in about 5. She's going to give you 5 minutes and it's over with, because it affects my vibration and no one else is responsible for my vibration but me. So let's say a tragic thing happens in your life, right? Most people are going to call everyone they know and tell them about it. You know why I don't? Because you're creating a ripple wave of fear. So now everyone else is going to go, oh my God, what are you going to do? That's so sad. Oh no. You see how you're amplifying that energy?
Yeah. That's true.
Go talk to God about it. Talk to your 1 or 2 homegirls. Call your mama. Don't spread that and then bring all this negative, right? If you're going out for a big job or a big business thing and it's something you really believe in, don't tell everybody, because you don't need everybody being like, but how's that going to work, girl? I don't know. I cut that all the way off. There are so many things that the closest people in my life never found out till it was signed and happened. Because I knew you didn't have the frequency to support me on it. I'm not even going to bring that to you, because I will not allow negativity into my space. So the more we become energy managers, right? Like we have to be the security guards of our energy. And anything that makes it feel icky, we are allowed to say, I can't have that in my experience.
All facts, and you actually covered it all. I was going to circle back and say, yeah, we have to protect our mind. It's so, I never even thought about it that way until you mentioned it. We actually have to actively be on defense mode and protect the things that we're allowing to be absorbed into our head, into our mind and mental. And it takes a lot of active intention to even find the things or point out the things that are not very conducive to our mental health and well-being, the things that are toxic in our lives, because we've been so indoctrinated to and desensitized to accept so many different things that we don't even know, you know, how much these things that we are constantly viewing on a daily basis are affecting us. That's important. You really have to self-evaluate and really look at all the things that are polluting our minds. That's a great point. Now, if you were someone that had a close family member that was dealing with bad anxiety or has been in a depressive state for a while, how could you as a close family member personally support them in providing them with adequate, care and just support in general?
One of the tools I like to use is a 3-part question. So for the person you love the most that might be struggling, ask them, what would be the best way I can help you? Would you like space, support, or solutions? Because oftentimes we try to offer what we think the person needs. So maybe you have a person that is in a depressive state and they just need space. They just need you to just back up. You're calling me every day and I'm not in a good headspace and you're forcing me to show up when I don't feel great, and that's making me feel worse. I just need some space, right? So you think by supporting them, let me come around every day. That might not be what they need. Or do you need support? Do you need a therapist? Should I help you find community resources? Do you need us to come around you as a group? Do you need the family to come around more? So is it that you need more support and that's what you're really struggling with? Because if so, let me know and I can help mobilize that. Or do you need solutions? Is there something specific that is causing you anxiety and depression that maybe we can think through together and I can help you figure out how to solve that? Those are all great ways to help, but let people tell you what would be the best way. Because I think, and for years, I mistakenly and in error would offer solutions to the people I love that had anxiety when really what they wanted was my support. Really what they wanted was for me to listen and to say, I understand and I can hold space for you. Maybe sometimes they wanted me to leave them the fuck alone. And I was Mrs. Sally's solutions. Like, well, you can just meditate. And they're like, girl, be quiet, because I'm not there. I'm really not. And as I've gone through challenges in my life and my own periods of depression and anxiety, it made me realize, yeah, people don't always want solutions. Sometimes they do, and I appreciate them sometimes. But man, it really makes me feel so great when people check in and ask me what I need, because it tells me you actually care about me. It's not about what you want to give. You care about what it is that I need. So I think that's a really good approach.
That is a great approach. That is a great approach. And that is a true testament to your experience, because I've never even heard it put that way. I swear.
Thank you.
I can say that I am one of the solution givers as well. Whenever somebody comes to me with advice, I'm like, well, all you gotta do, just try it this way. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
and I never stop to think that I should just like stop and listen and just be a listening ear without providing any input. You know, that could be something that they want. But it's very valuable information.
And sometimes it's humbling what people need, because it can be so different than what you thought. You know, like I've had people that are like, can you just come over here and sit with me? Like, I don't want you to say anything. I just need somebody to be here. Or like, can you just FaceTime me? I might be doing things in the background, but like, I just don't want to feel alone. You know what I mean? Where you might not think that's a thing or it's that big of a deal, but that's the thing that they need that would make them feel better. You know what I mean? So I think opening up that space is and it just makes that relationship closer. Because a lot of times when you deal with mental health struggles, you want to isolate. Yeah. And people pushing solutions on you makes you want to isolate more, because you feel like the broken vessel. And so in those times when I have felt damaged, for someone to be like, you're okay, just let me know how I can support you, I'm like, thank you.
Last question. We talked briefly about how exercise would absolutely make you feel better, just getting your body moving, because it forces you to be in the present moment. What role does our diet play in increasing the symptoms of both anxiety and or depression?
It has a huge effect. And before I answer that, I'll just give a 2-minute on what you just said, which is the reason that, and not just exercise, but any kind of movement is critical, is that when we experience big emotions or traumas, emotions actually kind of are like squirted out as a liquid through your body. And when we don't move that energy out, it crystallizes, and that's where disease starts to form. So for example, people that have ovarian cysts, fibroids, what have you, that's a lot of emotion that has crystallized in your reproductive system. And now it's a hard thing that you have to detox from and get rid of, right? So when you're doing movement, that could be dance, that could be taking a walk, that could be going to the gym, jumping jacks, I don't care what you do. It is forcing that energy to move around. Because remember, we're not just blood and bone, right? We have meridian points that energy flows through. This is the basis of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. Movement keeps that energy from being blocked, which keeps us from getting ill. The diet is key, because food is information. Okay? And this is something that Dr. Sebi spoke about at length before he died. Food gives us cellular information. The problem is most of us are taking in dead food and not live food. Food that is processed has no information. It just has poison. So the more you eat it, it is giving you toxins, no information. The more we eat live food, it is not only feeding our system nutrients, but it's also giving us information. So here's what I mean by that. If you take in a solid diet, and also look at what you're eating. For example, red meat filled with testosterone promotes anger, right? Dairy promotes mucus in the body. So when you look at what you're eating, it's directly correlated to how you feel, because your system is clogged with toxins and is not receiving positive information. When those two things combine, your whole system starts to break down. So the first thing I would say is, I never promote, if you want to be vegan, pescatarian, vegetarian, do your thing. But what I will say is, take the processed food out of your house. And by processed food, I don't just mean soda, chips, junk food, fast food. I mean white bread, white sugar, white flour, anything that comes in a package or a box that you can't figure out the earthly red, like basis, Gotta go. Because it's just clogging you up with stuff. And also on the flip side of that, everything that was needed to heal us is in nature. So like St. John's wort is an herb that is a natural antidepressant. Eating blueberries gives you antioxidants that raises your serotonin also. Like there's so many things that you can eat that will actually improve how you feel. So for me, diet is like one of the biggest components. And people ask me all the time, well, are you being fake? I know you go through a lot, but you always seem like you're doing well. I said, here's why. My wellness structure creates a guardrail for when my life falls to shit. Here's what I mean by that. My life still happens like y'all's life happens. But because I'm eating a certain way, because I'm doing my self-care every day, because I'm journaling, because I'm in therapy, I can handle it better than maybe people would assume I can handle it. But if I wasn't sleeping and I was eating McDonald's 24/7 and I'm listening to angry ass music and I'm just locked inside, how well do you think you can handle your anxiety and depression? Not well. So I would encourage, and especially as Black people where we know heart disease, diabetes, stroke is prevalent, it's what we're eating. So yeah, it's causing those things, but it's also causing anxiety. It's causing depression, right? Like I encourage people to start exploring Queen Afua's work. She's been a holistic healer for 40 years, and she actually made a connection between why we eat what we eat. So I'll just give you a little sample. We tend to eat dairy when we don't feel nurtured. We eat fried foods when we're angry. But doing that just creates a feedback loop, right? So it's like, think about it. When do we eat a whole tub of ice cream? When we're on our period. When you're sad. When you're feeling depleted, right? When you just broke up with your boyfriend, you want to eat a thing of, no, call your girlfriends. Go get hugs. Call your guy friends. Get hugged. Go around your family, right? If you're feeling angry, oh, I just got pissed off at work. I don't feel like cooking. What do? Go to McDonald's. Order some pizza. Nah. That would be the time. You can still go to a fast food place that makes salad. Go to Subway. They eat fresh. So it's not that, right? So once we start to explore the connection between diet and our mind, body, and spirit, we'll realize that what we take in is actually key. Alcohol is a neurotoxin. People are drinking thinking it's going to make them feel better. It causes depression. So all my sisters that love their glass of wine every evening, I'm not saying don't enjoy your life. I'm saying a few glasses is actually making your depression increase. If you're doing it every day, every 2-3 days, if you're always hitting brunch every weekend and going out, it's making you more depressed. It's making you more anxious. Here's a controversial thought. My weed smokers out there, it is increasing your anxiety. I'm a cannabis user and I can tell you that for a fact. I resisted it for years. You actually sleep better and have less anxiety the less you smoke. Switch to CBD and edibles. It's affecting you.
Interesting.
So it's like when we acknowledge that we are holistic beings, everything that we take in affects us, then we start to be more aware and conscious of what we allow in. Because we know that, that might not make me feel great.
That, oh my gosh, you dropped so much knowledge and wisdom in this whole show. I just can't even process it at
Thank
this
you.
I can't wait to go back and actually listen to it so I can actually hear, in full detail. But you definitely spoke some great wisdom, and I hope that the audience is really as appreciative as I am for this conversation. I wanted to ask you where we can find you on social media.
Yeah.
I love your TikTok, by the way, so anybody watching this, please check that out first.
Absolutely. I am at Nikki Valentine across all platforms. So that's INIKKI Valentine, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. Find me there. My website is www.thestyleshaman.com. That's where you can buy any of my products and book a one-on-one session with me. And I'm always excited to talk to folks one-on-one because I think there's a lot of work to do, a lot of healing we can do. And there's a lot of bright lights and amazing people out there that just need a bit of support. And I know how instrumental that's been on my journey. So I'm happy to pay it forward and pour that back.
All right, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Sacred Sisterhood podcast. We hope you found Nikki Valentine's insights and strategies for conquering anxiety and depression inspiring and helpful. As an elevation coach, author, and the founder of The Style Shaman, Nikki truly embodies the mission of the Sacred Sisterhood to empower and uplift women on their journey towards greater well-being and self-discovery. Remember, no matter what challenges you may be facing, you are not alone. There are resources, tools, and strategies available to help you overcome anxiety and depression and create a life filled with abundance and joy. Be sure to check out Nikki's one-on-one sessions, her workbooks, and social media content for even more support and guidance. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Peace.